I do politics sometimes.
Flamenco.
I just do VTuber drama sometimes and try not to be the focus of it. Not been doing the best job of it the last couple of days, so you know, I don't know. Hopefully we can go through this without that happening tonight. Yeah, who knows?
Oh, buddy.
Okay. Kai.
Oh, buddy.
Hey, I'm a conservative, and before you guys say you sound like Nick Fuentes, I've heard it before, and I honestly appreciate it. He's a friend of mine, but you know, I think Patrick Bateman is a more appropriate comparison.
How much do I have to super chat you to do the whole opening monologue from?
Well, you'd
Psycho?
be an idiot. You'd be an idiot if you did, because I've already done it. But so let me set it to what's the dono right now? I think you'd have to donate $4,998 or
Mr. Girl,
$4,798.
why don't you introduce
Not that
yourself?
flush.
Hey, I'm Mr. Girl. When I show up to panels, I'm like a pH test. And if you freak out and leave, well, you might need to reevaluate your grit, your strength. That's it.
Okay, I'm Stardust. I'm just the host. I guess we'll just get right into it. Topic number 1 is democracy doing its job and fairly representing what the people want in their regime. What would you change? Kai looks like he wants to go first.
No, I'm just smiling at I totally didn't expect this to all go down this way, and
I did not expect it either.
Very entertaining start. Yeah, I don't think so. I kind of err, and I've been recently thinking about this. The whole idea of democracy is something that's been kind of hotly debated throughout all of history, and being in college is something that has given me a weird perspective, because every single political science class I'm in, all they talk about is how we can further democracy and what will lead to more democratic representation and this, and that. And I kind of have I think it was Socrates who expressed his concern with democracy, which is basically I don't know about all these plebeians or these stupid people voting. I, of course, have to grapple with the fact that I'd probably be getting rid of a lot of Republican voters, but I also adhere to the bell curve of practical intelligence, as John Doyle would put it, which is the stupid people and the very smart people coming together against the people in the middle, which are the liberals. I think the big threat is that democracy can be totally overwhelmed if you just import a bunch of people who think pretty differently, and this is, of course, the immigration aspect of it. You can pretty distinctly change what a country believes without actually polling the people who have historically represented that country, and I don't know if that's very fair. So that's kind of my basic take on it.
Okay.
I think democracy is based. Unfortunately, we don't have a lot of voter participation, so the voter composition of this country does not always resemble the actual population makeup of the country. I think that arguments about historical people is incredibly fucking cringe. If they're dead, I don't really care what they think. Nobody has a right to permanently section off a land and expect that the people there won't change, whether we're talking about the ideas of the people there or the actual types of people there. People are going to move all around the United States. People are going to move all around the world. As long as we all agree on what our immigration policy should look like. If some people move here, it's your job to demonstrate why your platform is best for everybody instead of just a select few in the country. And if you do want to just cater to a select few in the country, you shouldn't be surprised when your platform is not that popular. Yeah.
All right.
I guess largely I am kind of okay with democracy in terms of an ideal, but in practice, I think it might lead to some pretty not great outcomes. I think one of the biggest examples I would say is the broad bipartisan support for the Patriot Act, which is probably one of the most universally reviled pieces of legislation nowadays to most common voters, but it still gets passed regardless. And back when it was passed, it was unanimously supported because, of course, who would be against something called the Patriot Act? I think that in general, democracy sort of selects towards things that might appeal to people's lowest common denominator, whether that be imagined threats or whether that be an appeal to you'll get this if you vote for this person, and whatever candidate guarantees that they're going to give this, even if they do or don't actually end up delivering, is going to get the vote.
Mr. Girl?
I would say that the fact that there's a chunk of people in the country who do not believe that Joe Biden is a democratically elected president would suggest that whatever democracy is supposed to do, it is not doing. But I don't think I don't think it's fair to frame that as democracy is not doing its job. I think that one thing I heard a lot before the election is that public faith in democracy is necessary for democracy to work. That if people are drawn into conspiracy theories saying that their votes don't count, then at some point that starts to become true. And I also think that there's this irony or meta-irony that's become very popular in political discourse that undermines faith in publicly held elections. And so I think democracy itself is good, and I think that we have an obligation to uphold it by finding a balance between, yes, we don't want people lying or cheating in elections, but if you're lying about that for money and trying to get people to like you or be more popular by undermining faith in public elections, you are undermining and attacking democracy. And even though it's cool or funny to do so, I think it's irresponsible. I guess that's my current stance.
Okay.
Can I jump into it? I have questions.
Yeah, go right ahead.
Okay, sweet. So, Destiny, there's something that I've been wondering about for a while. You've kind of this, from what I understand, a blanket approach of everybody should vote. I don't recall whether I've heard you advocate for this. Do you believe in like mandatory voting? I think you've like alluded or thought about it before on a stream.
I go back and forth on it. I'm like 51-49 in favor of it, but I could be convinced against it. I don't know. I don't know.
Okay, so what do you think is the advantage of like everybody voting? Like, what do you think advantages that?
It's annoying to me right now that people think that our political system is super corrupt and that it's representing corporate interest, when the reality is we're selecting for a certain percentage of voters, or a certain type of voter is voting. And that's why we see expressed in the government the things that are. So if everybody was forced to vote, then at the very least we could stop using that shitty fucking excuse for why things aren't getting done the way we want them to, and we can actually start blaming voters and holding voters responsible instead of just saying that like it's shady corporations and the deep state ruining everything.
Okay, I generally agree more with the reasoning, but I think it's also stupid to be like, yeah, once we get everybody to vote and like we've got people who don't care about it whatsoever voting, then we can, blame them for it. When I think that really the better alternative is to make it more difficult to vote. And I'll add a caveat here. What we want is to make voting accessible, but at the same time difficult, so that the people who want to vote and the ones who are willing to take the time to do it because they really truly feel that they have a voice in their country are going to go out of their way to do so. I think, if you were to tell me, and we saw this with like the past legislation that Democrats have been trying to push, that, we need, 24-hour voting, or we need people who can, do drive-through or drive-in voting. I find it a little bit silly to say that the people who we should care most about representing are the people who wouldn't vote in our elections if we didn't allow them to do it in a drive-through. Why are these the people who we should be really concerned with representing or voting people in?
I think the issue
it's
is
always been
fundamentally.
Yeah, go ahead.
People view democratic participation incorrectly. I would argue that you have the incorrect view. People seem to think that in the United States of America, you have options for how you want to engage with society. But that's not true. You have a forced engagement with society. Whether you like it or not, you are intersecting with other people in a plethora of ways. Whether you're talking about employer-employee relationships, whether you're talking about a direct engagement with, say, our welfare system, whether you're talking about creating children and putting more life, like there's a million different ways in traffic and where you live and how you vote and the things you do on the internet, like in every way, you have some buy-in to society. With the privilege and all the rights afforded to you in this society, there ought to be some responsibilities as well. And one of those responsibilities ought to be being a somewhat informed voter. I don't think that we can have this idea, this delusion that like, well, some people aren't informed enough to vote, so we should keep them from voting. LOL, they're voting in a whole bunch of other ways. They vote if they make themselves heard in city council meetings. They vote when they protest. They vote when they buy things from certain shops. They vote in the areas that they choose to rent and live in. They vote when they litter on the streets. Like, there is this huge buy-in in society, and voting is just one dimension of this buy-in.
Okay.
And to pretend that that's like something that only some people should do when everybody votes with a whole bunch of different actions, I fundamentally disagree with that. I think voting is a responsibility that we should all have.
Okay. I kind of agree with you. Like, I think that I think individuals should vote. I do think that's kind of an obligation you have. But if individuals who are like over the age of 18 or whatever, and who, as you say, vote in so many other ways, just completely skirt this obligation that they have to vote,